Call halal, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ruach HaKodesh. Let the elders of Great Millstone that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. To the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. So WA lawmakers. Now WA is an abbreviation for Washington. So Washington lawmakers advancing bill restricting employers from microchipping workers. All right. Olympia, Washington. With hundreds of bills dying, with less than 2 weeks left before the end of this year's legislative session, one of the bills advancing has to do with microchipping. Lawmakers want to restrict companies from acquiring or pressuring employees to have microchips implanted under their skin. Do companies require employees to get microchipped? Dig deeper. It's not a real life problem right now in the United States. There are no known cases of companies requiring or forcing workers to be microchipped. The measure is intended as a preemptive step, just in case. The main sponsor of HB is an abbreviation for House Bill 2303. Alright, whatever. We're gonna jump down to this part right here. This is super important. There are also exceptions made for microchips used for medical purposes. So Esau Edom, which is the biblical name of the so-called white man, all he has to do is classify microchips under medical purposes, and all this bullshit that you see about them debating, saying, no, we gotta protect the employees, all that shit's gonna mean nothing. And on top of that, for us in the know, we already know that the microchip is gonna be globally mandated. But now it gets a little bit deeper, because it's like, okay, they're gonna classify it under where is that shit? Microchips for medical purposes. And then what? Well, let's get the scriptures. So this is Ecclesiasticus or Sirach, chapter 12, verse 10. Never trust thine enemy. Never. And if you look up the word, you know what? Let's look up the word never in the Edom. Never. Not ever, at no time. So at no time, trust thine enemy. And we're going to jump down to Psalm chapter 83, verse 1. I'm going to just read up to 6. But the whole chapter basically tells us who our enemies are. The enemies of Israel. You so-called Negroes, you so-called Hispanics, you so-called Native Americans, and you Israelite foreigners that may look like the heathen nations, but you have the spirit of an Israelite dwelling in your body. So, Psalm 83 and 1. Keep not thou silence, O Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai power. Verse 2. For, lo, thine enemies make a tumult. Let's look up the word tumult. Tumult. Noise, confused, disorderly speech. Alright? When I think of the word confused, I think of Babylon, which is another way of saying America. So, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Now, when you look up crafty counsel, and I really have to say Tawada to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai for putting it on the spirit of Elder Apostle Gabar of Great Millstone, because he basically broke this down. That crafty counsel goes into the one world government. Alright, the new world order. Alright, so continuing on, verse 4. They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation. Can you imagine how much hatred you have to have towards a people to want them to be cut off from being a nation? That's how much hatred our enemies have. That the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. They want us to not only be cut off, but they want us to not even be remembered. So, I mean, it's right here. Verse 5. For they have consulted together with one consent that new world order. They are confederate against thee. Let's look up the word confederate. Confederate. To unite in a league or alliance. Okay, well, there you go. That one world government, man. Alright, so here's the point, though. Verse 6, okay? The tabernacles of Edom, and we know Edom is the biblical way of saying the nation of so-called white people. And the Ishmaelites, which are the so-called Arabs, of Moab, which are the so-called Chinese, and the Hagareans, which is basically a derivative of the Ishmaelites. All right, so going back to this news article, we understand that ultimately, that I'm just gonna put it plainly, this is all bullshit, because Esau Edom already has their plans. They already know they want to microchip people globally. They already know that they can microchip everyone except for the elect. Which is hilarious, because they're still going to attempt it anyways. And they're going to be in cahoots with all the enemies that are outlined in Psalm chapter 83. And what's fucked up is that they're actually also going to be in cahoots with the 2/3 of our nation, which we know are basically going to be cut off. As Elder Apostle Tahar Great Millstone would say, they're basically black Edomites. Alright? But yeah, I want to go back to that point though. Where it says there are also exceptions made for microchips used for medical purposes. See, they have a saying in the world, the devil is in the details. Right, so imagine they write like 100-page law saying, yep, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this. But then in the finest, most minute print, so fine that you need a micro glass or whatever it's called, right, to like really look into the words so tiny, it's going to say, but there are exceptions made for microchips used for medical purposes. And if you look at the people that are chipped currently, they were chipped in a medical setting, right? Who's that motherfucker that's able to control shit with his mind, allegedly, apparently, right? He had to go through it was all like medical bullshit. So we know on a global scale, it's going to be the same thing. Same thing with the motherfucking the bullshit, the juicy juice, right? The C19. All those nurses that literally, it was a medical setting. I remember I was walking past a mall, and they had these medical tents set up and lines and shit, and people would, it was fucked up, man. But that was the prelude to what's going to be happening with the microchip. Alright, so let's get the scripts. Just a few talking points on Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10. The enemy ultimately refers to those opposed to Israel, Yasharallah. Point 2, even when appearing friendly, their inward spirit remains contrary. That's a key point, because Esau's going to come onto stage, on the TV. Let's just say he's addressing America. He's going to be like, my fellow American citizens, I know we live in tough times, but those tough times can easily be overcome with this new medical advancement that our top medical scientists have been working. You know what I'm saying? Like that bullshit jargon that if you're not in the truth, man, it can easily fuck up your mind. All right, here we go. Talking point 3. Rust represents hidden corruption that inevitably surfaces, right? Because if you know, let's just take an iron sword, right? Due to oxidation or you know what I mean? When oxygen hits iron, right? I'm not trying to get too nerdy, but like, you know, like when how do you put it? Like compounds and all that shit, like reactions and whatnot, eventually that iron is gonna rust, inevitably. There's no such thing currently as unrustable, if that's even a word, iron. It's the same thing with the wickedness of our enemies. Our number one enemy being Esau, Edom, which is the biblical name of the so-called white man. Alright, going down to Psalm 55 and 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Right? Because their blessing is the sword, pertaining back to Genesis. His words were softer than oil. And for you brothers that use oil on the daily pretty much, you know how soft and, you know, when you touch it, it's just smooth, right? Yet were they drawn swords. Man, that literally describes Esau, Edom to a T, right? Whenever you say an Edomite in public, they act like they're so righteous and they're kind and nah, man, equal rights for everybody. But then behind closed doors, they're eating babies, doing this and that, wishing death upon their neighbor, even though when they see their neighbor, it's, hey, how you doing? But then behind closed doors, I fucking hate, you know what I'm saying? And that's just like on a lower level. Imagine what the top banking families are thinking, right? So with all that being said, what can we do, Lord wills we're the elect? This is what we can do. This is the words of Yahushua HaMashiach, the author and finisher of our faith and beyond. So this is St. Mark chapter 14, verse 38. Watch ye and pray. Right? Elder Apostle Tahar of Great Millstone brought this out recently in one of his epistles. On the daily, man, you should be on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, because you miss one day, you miss a lot. There are constantly news articles that are being released, showing you the inner workings of what Esau, Edom, and the other enemy nations, the heathen nations, what they're up to. So really, there's no excuse. There's always something constantly going on, and Yahweh Shemashah is amazing and beyond, because if you're looking for these news articles, you'll find something that can be brought out. You know what I'm saying? And guess what? If you sit on it too long and it's supposed to be brought out, guess what's going to happen? Another brother's going to bring it out. So inevitably, what I'm saying is the truth will come out. But going back to this, watch ye and pray. Prayer is our weapon, is our numero uno weapon. If you ever meet an Israelite that says, yeah, man, I'm good, but I don't pray, turn the other direction. Yahushua prays, and he's the author and finisher of our faith. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to pray. Lest ye enter into temptation. Right? And what's the ultimate temptation? I'll show you. Microchipping, the MOTB. Alright? The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. Alright? That's why we have to take precaution, man. We gotta stay circumspect. Because it's crunch time, man. It's if any of you brothers watch NFL or have watched NFL, or even if you just understand the rules, you know, when they have the final 2 minutes, right? Before the game ends, right? And it's crunch time. Instead of running the ball, and there's no timeouts either. Instead of running the ball, the team that's trying to win is throwing fucking passes like left and right, you know, just gunslinging it. Why? Because it's crunch time. but we're living the crunch time now. So we gotta understand the spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. So we have to stay on our P's and Q's because it's the final countdown. So with that being said, I hope y'all brothers and sisters were edified. Shalom.